I'm going to dive straight in and I'm just going to fire up this blank part, and the first bit I'm going to show is just bringing a human into our environment. So I go to this feature and you can see we've got this set of human modelling tools. I'm going to go through some of these, but I'll just place a human. Prompts us with this dialogue. Now we can name the human model. I'll show you why that might be useful a bit later, but this bit where we've got this database, what this is showing is all these values, so these different heights and weights of different human models, it's all stored within NX, so we're not having to look these values up. So for example, if I'm going to stick with the default, which is this 50% stature, we're getting this height and this weight. But if I was to change this to something like, let's say for the Chinese database, this has changed. If I change this for, let's say, North American, this has changed. I can obviously go in and change this to something like 95th percentile. And again, the values are changing. So I'm not needing to worry about what these are so much. I just need to know what database I want to use. We can also actually have custom values. So we don't have to take what's in the database. I could just change this and say, well, I want this to be a custom value. So now I need a human at a particular height, at a particular weight. We can create that very quickly. I'm just going to stick with the defaults for now. And I'm going to go OK. And NX now is going away and creating us our human model. And it's going to match, obviously, all these values. So if I just fit this, you can see here's our human. It is a feature just like any other in NX. So it shows in the part navigator. We can show and hide it just the same, look. And if I double click on it, it's going to take us into edit. And this pulls up this edit human toolbar. There's a lot of different options in here, and I'm just going to go through a few of these on today's webinar. But just to show this, I can at any point go back into this and change anything. So I could now select a different database, or I could go in and change the stature or the weight. I'm just going to OK this. Now it brings it in by default, just standing in a straight position. But I've got the ability to go in and adjust joints. So it's starting off, and it's telling us in this top left, look, this is the joint base of the neck. And I can rotate this just using these standard drag handles that I'm sure you've all seen and used in NX before. If I try and twist this round, you can see it's locked at a certain range because it understands the joint range. It's not going to let me spin this full 360 degrees like Exorcist. It's locking at 56 degrees in that direction. And if I bring this round and twist in this side, you see it's doing the same. So it understands this. If I just close this, now you can see I would have modified my human. At any point, I can just go back into here and select different part of the body. So if I was to go in and say, let's pick here, now I can rotate this position. It's telling me the joint. Again, we can see our range. We could override it if we want to, but we don't really have a need to do that for this example. If I was to pick, let's go for the arm now, look. We'll go to the shoulder. And I could turn symmetry on. So if I wanted both to move at the same time, it's now affecting both joints. If I just close this, what you're seeing here is a very sort of manual approach. So for me to put this character into a certain position, I'd probably have to manipulate quite a few different joints. So what we've got is actually a library as well. So if I just go into this, there's a lot of pre-configured postures here, look. So I could have somebody walking, standing with their arms out. Things like pull back, look. Push forward. If we scroll down, you can see there's quite a few sort of out-the-box ones. I could have seated working, look. I could have stand working. And I could now go in and use the adjust joint and actually manually tweak this a little bit. So if it wasn't in the exact position I wanted, it doesn't matter, I can tweak these, but it's a good starting point. Think of it like a reuse library, really. If you're finding that every time you're using human, you're creating your model, you're having to position it in the same sort of position, well, actually, we could store that back in the posture library. So now we'd have it available in here to say, well, actually, here's one that we've created. I'm just going to return this to standing straight position, and I'm going to go close. Rather than actually controlling the joints, it's also possible to use something called inverse kinematics. And if I just select this, this is on the head at the moment, look, and I've got these drag handles again, and what this is doing, look, it's changing and manipulating that joint. If I was to move this now like this, so rather than directly affecting the joint, I'm controlling what is almost like a focus. So if I wanted to see, well, would the head position be able to see something in a certain place, well, I'd be able to place this, and you can see now it's trying to manipulate that joint in order to keep looking at this. If I go on and say, well, let's do the left hand, I'm going to get the same thing. Look, so now when I go in and change this, you can see what it's trying to do. I am able to move this away from the model. So where this might be useful, let's imagine that we want to see if we can reach something in a particular position. I could manipulate this, so place this sort of like the red hand that we're seeing here, and I can rotate this as well, look, and you can see it's understanding how the joint would move like this. I could place that, and I very easily then can see, well, actually look how far away I am. If I bring this in, if you watch what this does, starts to then bend, look, and again this is using inverse kinematics to calculate this. So it's a very nice and quick way to get something in a general position. I could also control whether my initiation joint is at the shoulder or the waist, look, so rather than now it moving the shoulder, it's allowing it to bend at the waist. Another little option, I'll just click on here, we can control the hand positions as well. So if we wanted something like, you know, completely open hands, we might just go down here, look, we could have some sort of a ring pull if we wanted, we could have a fist. I can also control how much that is in that position. So at 100%, look, it's fully closed, it's fully in this hand shape. If I return this to 0, look, then it's going back to what would be your default position. Another thing I'm going to show just very quickly, I'm just going to close this now and I'm just going to hide off my human. Let's say that all you're really interested in is just the hand. It might be that you want to see if a hand can reach through some sort of guarding or something like that, and you want to sort of calculate that, but you're not really that interested in the rest of the human body. We do have the option to just create human hands. So if I click on this, very similar options, look, I can pick my gender, so let's go for a female right hand. Do I want to include the forearm? I can also basically have gloves on. So this might be that, you know, you need to reach into something, you can have protective gloves on. They might be quite thick, so it could have an impact on where your hand would fit. So now I could specify gloves and a thickness. I can also select different databases, which is going to give me different length and breadth of hand. Look, I'll just go OK, and we'll do a fit again. And there's my human model. We double click on it, it's going to allow us to edit. So we could change the database, we could take the gloves off, we could actually change position. So much like you've just seen in the previous example, look. So if I was to here say, well, we need something with some sort of grip, or let's go for some kind of a pinch. I can then also go in and change how much that's affected. Look, I could independently adjust every single joint as well. I'm just going to OK that, and I'm going to come back now to inverse kinematics, but I'm going to use a different example. So what we've got here is a structure, so this cabinet. This was actually done using the NX Structure Designer as well. Relatively new module for NX. I'm going to be doing a webinar on that in a few weeks, so if that's of interest to people, keep an eye out for that. But in this one, look, we've placed our human in position, and if I go into this to edit it, I'm going to go back into inverse kinematics. So rather than actually just dragging things in position now, and us basically, which is a very manual approach, you know, putting it and saying I want this point here, or I want to move the joint to this degrees, or whatever I need to do, I can change this to an option called active reach. And what that's going to let me do is very much pick a point. So I'm saying I want to control where my left hand is, and let's say we want to see if we can comfortably grab this handle. I can position it, so much the same as anything else. Look, how do I want to grab hold of this? I can change the position from here. I could also do that after if I wanted to, so the hand shape. If I go OK now, it physically moves the model. I've not had to manually do every single joint. Could be that we want to see if we could reach the top of this cabinet, for example. So in which case I'll go back into here. I'm going to say this time, well, let's see if we can touch that point there. I might want to change my hand position to something else. If I go OK, you can see now, yes, we can reach that point. So it's just another way of controlling this. We could have manually done it, but this is just a nice little tool that allows us to position things a little bit quicker and be able to specifically say, you know, I want to touch this. The next example is a similar kind of thing where it's predicting a posture rather than us manually doing it, but this is very much aimed at sort of the automotive industry, and we're going to put our model into a vehicle now. So what I've got here is a set of surfaces, basically. It doesn't have to be a set of surfaces. This could be a fully detailed model of a vehicle. So this could be the finished thing, or it can be very simple like what we're working with here. This has actually been created with this base data feature, which is part of the vehicle design automation application. We're not going to be showing that today. If it is something that people are interested in, let us know, and we could probably put a webinar together showing some of the functionality of that, but that's not what we're showing today. And as I said, it didn't have to have been created using base data in order to use the human model, which I'm about to show you. I'm just going to come back to my industry tab, and we're going to place a human. I'm just going to take the defaults just to save us a little bit of time, and we've placed the human into the environment. Look. Now this base data, I'm just going to go into my sketch in here, and you can see I've got key defining points. So things like this is L31, and we've got HA, we've got H70 here, we've got L8. These will be familiar to anybody that's involved with automotive vehicle design. And a lot of these obviously have come from the SAE standards. I'm just going to go finish. And rather than me try and manually place my character now, I'm going to use this feature called Predict Posture. And what it's doing is it's giving us lots of default values to where these particular points in the vehicle are. So we mentioned L31, we mentioned H8, and you know these are all listed in here. And there's a whole host of others, which to say we're not going to go into too much detail on this for this webinar. But if I go now and say, right, let's pick firstly, what class do we want? We've got class A, which is a car, we've got class B, which is a truck, we've got military vehicles, and our defaults can be affected by this. You know, trucks, for example, generally the hill to hip is probably larger, the back angle generally is less than in a commercial vehicle, but you know, we can tweak all of these. Rather than manually inputting these, because I've got this base data, I'm going to pick certain key points in my car. So I'm picking these points up. I'm going to pick the human that I want to control. I'm going to pick a steering wheel where I want this to be. So I've modelled it so we can select it. My pedals, I'm going to choose solid because I've modelled these surfaces, but actually it could be a curve, or I could pull this in from the SAE data. So if I pick that in, that's going to give me an angle value. We're not, we've modelled it, so we want to see how close to what we've modelled, whether it's good enough. So go into here, pick this, go into here, look, pick this. I can get it now if I want to show me where it's going to stick the feet. It's saying to me, do you realise you've only picked one AHP point, where accelerator heel point? Yes, absolutely fine, because I'm going to manually tweak the position. And that's where it's going to place them. I could tweak these, so I can adjust these slightly. Let's just stick with it. And if I go OK now, you can see what it's done. It's now automatically placed our human model in the environment. We haven't had to manually go in and adjust every single joint. You could do that. You could do that, and that's not an issue, but this is a lot quicker. It's also associative. So anything I want to go in and start making tweaks and changes to, you know, I can update this very quickly. Now, a question I often get asked about this sort of thing and human modelling in general is, okay, it's really nice, looks really good that you've placed a human character in there. It's great that it gives you a sense of scale, but what really is the point? the feature I want to show next hopefully will answer that. And I'm sure we all know what it's like when you get into a car and it might not be, you know, the most comfortable, or after 20 minutes of driving your back might ache a little bit, and you know it's probably not the most comfortable thing in the world. What we can do within NX is do a comfort assessment, and this is based on studies over the years that lots of different physicians have done, and there's lots of different results, and a lot of these are embedded again within NX, so we're not having to go away and do separate studies. It's within the software. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my comfort setup, and here's a set of different results that we can choose. So these are different physicians that over the years have done different results. So we've got Etienne Grandjean, a Swiss physician, Henry Dreyfus, all these different ones. We're just going to go with the default, and I'm going to say that's the standard, that's the results and the findings that I want to use for my assessment. I can now run my assessment. And I'm presented with something like this. And what this is showing me, look, is where we've got all our key joints, it's showing us how comfortable, based on those results, it is. So my head, you can see, well, spot on, which I would hope it is, because it's looking straightforward, so it should be pretty good. But some of these others are a little out. A lot of these are within the green. So if they're green, then it's considered acceptable. Probably not optimal, because say it's not dead center, but it's good. Got an issue with these two red ones though, look. And they're actually my left and right foot. So I've got an option now. I could go in and change my underlying data. So I could go back to this sketch and I could adjust this and update, and it will change that. But let's say I don't have access to that. So it's not me that's physically changing the models. It might be me that's just trying to find, well, is this good enough or not? I could instead choose to just move the human. I can also set a reference. So now when I go into this, and I'm going to say, right, let's modify this. We're going to go back to exactly what you saw at the beginning. Look, this time I'm going to choose my foot. I'll do it symmetrically because why not? I want them to move at the same time. And if I go in now and start tweaking this, you should be able to see here, look, what's happening. So I'll go, right, you know what, let's go for dead in the middle. Looks good to me. We can clear the reference, which is showing us the existing. And there's our new position. As I say, I could have gone into this and changed the underlying sketch, which would have done the same thing. I'm just going to close that. And that, for me, is one of the big advantages of using human modelling. We're able to do these comfort assessments. It doesn't have to be in a vehicle either. Could be on the cabinet when we're trying to reach to the top to grab something. Is it comfortable? When we're trying to reach inside, maybe to get something off a shelf, we can run that comfort assessment on any human. I'm just going to close this, and we're going to go to another example. And what we're seeing now is a human model placed inside a cab. So exactly the same process of what you've seen. Again, could have been done manually, could have been done with Predict Posture. This has been done with Predict Posture. And I've changed it, so I've also put the hand reaching out to try and see if I can press some of these buttons. So I could run a comfort assessment, but in this instance, I'm trying to see if I can reach key bits within inside our cab. If I just zoom out so you can see what we're looking at here, you know, we've got our tracks and our crossings and things, and we've got our human placed inside the cab, and we're just trying to get an idea of what he can reach. So what we're going to do is go back into the human, and I can turn on something called eye windows, and that's showing us now what we're seeing from our left and right eye. You can see that after the hyphen, we've got 1 PLM. That's because that's what I've named the human. So earlier when I said about where you can name things, where it's useful is if I've got several humans in a model, or maybe, you know, several humans but in different positions but sat in the same place, and I don't want to move one, I want to record all of them, well, I could potentially flick between different windows and I know which one's which. This is live as well. So if I go into here now and adjust this joint, look, you can see I'm seeing a live preview of what I can see. This is really to see what I, you know, within reach. Another option that I could have done, and I'm just going to close this, I could also have created a reach zone. So before bringing any of these kind of buttons and things in, I could have selected my human. I can choose various objects. I'm going to say let's go for the right finger. So we'll see if we can touch this button. Look, I'm not going to include waist rotation. I'm going to assume our human is sat still. If I OK this, it's created me, look, this motion envelope. And I can see that, yep, this button is within that envelope. So potentially my human sat in there. There's no issues for reaching it. And I can do that before I've brought anything in. If I wanted to see, well, what can I see through this window? We could use the eye windows, but what I would recommend to get an accurate result of that is using some sort of a shadow curve linked with this point. So in the human, when I've edited it, I've created a point between the middle of the left and the right eye. So now I've created a curve, and if I just unhide it and we look at this, there's a curve, look, which we call a shadow curve, showing me what is in my field of view. So these, for example, I wouldn't be able to see based on sitting in this position and looking through that window. So that's going to give you a nice accurate result. Before I finish, I just wanted to quickly show you this. It's a typical workflow of using human modelling. And we're starting up with create a human, which was the first thing that I showed you. And then we're going to define its posture and position. So we could use either independently changing each joint, or we could use the inverse kinematics option for this. Do we want to place this inside a vehicle? Well, if the answer is yes, we can place it as either a driver or a passenger using predict posture, which again I've shown you during this webinar, where we can pick key points using either base data or detailed model. If we've done that, it then comes to this, and if the answer was no, we're coming to this area. So this is where we can now say, well, do we need to define some sort of a reach zone? Do we want to set up a comfort, set up an analysis? We then get to this, and based on these results, so is the reach zone satisfactory? Is the comfort analysis giving us the results we expected? If the answer to this is that we need to do more work, well then yes, we need to refine our product. And what we're going to basically do is go back to this step and repeat. If the answer is no, great, we can move on and we move to the next stage of the product design. So this is a typical workflow, and this is irrelevant as to whether we're using it for automotive industry and placing a vehicle, in which case we just don't use this step, or whether this is to put it in some sort of factory layout, trying to figure out whether we can reach something, actually reach through some sort of guarding or reach a high level shelf. The process is the same.